Welcome to the Dr. Warren Gage podcast. Want to continue Job's response to Zophar. So we'll look at chapter 14, which will continue but conclude his response to his companion. He says, "Man who is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble." It's pretty frank and discouraging look at life, but it's authentic and it's true. Anyone who's born of woman, that language is interesting because it encompasses everyone but Adam. It even includes the last Adam, Christ himself. Jesus uses it when he said there was no one greater born of woman than John the Baptist. Interesting language, born of woman, but that comprehends all of us in our humanity. Man who is born of woman is a few days and full of trouble. That is, life is sorrowful. There is a very severe and sorrowful aspect to life. There are minor keys in life. Life is like a symphony. There are minor and major keys. They all together are woven together. They're composed. I think that's some consolation we can take, that God is ordaining all things. And there will be a symphony ultimately in harmony with Christ himself. He comes forth like a flower and fades away. So he uses a metaphor. Isaiah uses this in Isaiah 40. All generations are like the grass, he says. The grass grows up and then it perishes and falls back into the earth, and then in the right season, the grass grows up again. And he compares that to the generations of men. And a further one that compares it is like this one. He comes forth like a flower and fades away. Some of these organic vegetation that comes forth from the earth turn out to be not grass but flowers. So they grow a little bit taller, and they display these magnificent, brilliant colors in the floral palette that we see. That all of that God brings out of the black earth. Amazing that he can bring life itself and the beauty of life, and the grass and the flower of the field. He brings that forth from the soil, the black soil, or the different kinds of soil. But anyway, man's life, in Isaiah, he said, the generation of mankind is like the flower, like the grass of the field, but some are exceptional and are like the flower. Some rise up above others and display a fragrance that is attractive and a beauty that draws the eye. I think he's speaking of those who are remarkably gifted and stand up and above their peers. He says they flourish for a season, but then the flower fades and then it falls. And so it's almost like it's more fragile even than the grass. When the breath of the Lord, the judgment comes, the grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God shall stand. The word there is kum. It's Jesus' word for resurrection, talitha kumi. The word of our God shall stand. So Jesus himself came forth from the earth, according to the metaphor, as the grass and as the flower, and faded. But because he is the word of God, he cannot remain in that situation of the grave. He must stand again, and that's in truth and in fact how that happened. So Job's speaking of the fragility of life, human life and beauty. He says, he comes forth like the flower and fades away. He flees like a shadow and does not continue. He flees like a shadow. As the sun rises, the shadows flee and close in and disappear at high noon when the sun is at its height. And do you open your eyes on such a one and bring me to judgment with yourself? How are you to judge me? I think Job is crying out. You too are mortal. You too will fall into the earth. And your famous wisdom will perish with you, I think is the idea. How can you bring a judgment upon me? Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean thing? No one. The question of Job is remarkable. Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean thing? It's impossible. If you think about it in terms of the ceremonial law, once you are declared to be a leper, you have to exclude yourself from company. You're no longer allowed to come to synagogue or temple or any of the festivals. You are an outcast and have to declare yourself before you go away to die a miserable death. Once you are declared unclean, you cannot be made clean. And yet, the law makes a provision for one who is a leper. When the prophet comes, he will be able to heal the leper. And, of course, that would have only happened once in the time of Elisha with Naaman the leper from Syria. But it happened multiple times during the ministry of Christ. Many lepers, I suspect, went to the temple to testify that there was a prophet in the land like Elisha, but they had closed their minds and darkened their hearts not to receive that testimony which Moses had provided. But that means that somewhere, somehow, a clean thing can be brought forth out of an unclean thing. The most unclean thing after leprosy, the most unclean thing in Israel is death itself, the corruption of death. Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean thing? Who has the power of resurrection and of healing the leper? Who can bring a clean thing out of an unclean? No one. But he has not yet seen the Lord. But he's aware that the Lord is coming. Since man's days are determined, the number of his months is with God. You have appointed his limits so that he cannot pass. God sets the day of our death. That's made very clear in the time of Hezekiah, when Isaiah the prophet goes to him and tells him, "You will die and not live." And he turns his face to the wall and weeps and cries out to God, and God sends Isaiah back. The problem with sending Isaiah back is the prophet has already spoken and said, "You will die." And that word cannot fall to the ground. It calls into question the whole ministry of Isaiah if it does. But God can tell his prophet to go back and assure Hezekiah he will yet have a season of life. And to give an effect to that iconically, to prove that that's the case, God turns the sun back in its course. So he is the cosmic sovereign who is making that promise. So Isaiah, who is a prophet, is telling him, he's prophesying that he will die, but then he prophesies that he will prolong his days. And in that, Isaiah will prophesy of the Christ that he will die, but he will also prolong his days, Isaiah 53. And by that he means in resurrection. So as it were, Hezekiah is being given, is foreshadowing the death and resurrection of the king of Judah. So anyway, look away from him that he may rest till like a hired man he finishes his day. That is, he's talking again about the mortality of mankind. Look away from him that he may rest. We have no rest from our labors until we rest the rest of death. Till like a hired man he finishes his day. And when God has appointed it, our day comes to an end, and that's it. But God is a generous master, and he can reward us as he will. And we're not to be jealous of his kindness, even when he offers a full denarius to those who have only come in of late, and which is more than they would have ever expected. And we who are laboring for our denarius, the daily wage of a worker, should not be jealous if God awards longer life, more prosperous life, or even eternal life to others. For there is hope for a tree. This is interesting. He's talking about man has no hope. There's more hope for a tree. Some of the trees, like the red forest, the sequoias, can live for up to 1,000 years, years upon years. Olive trees, some of them are, I think, have been documented to be like 700 years old. There is more hope, he's saying. There is hope for a tree. And then he says, even then, if it is cut down, it will sprout again. So from the same root system, another sprout will come up. The house of David was like that. It was cut down. A stump was left in the ground. But a shoot came out of that, out of dry ground. That's Isaiah will sing too about in his penitential hymn for Israel in Isaiah 53. He grew up before us like a shoot out of dry ground. Nobody would have put any stock in it. It wasn't a tall, stately tree like David. It was just a little shoot. But it grew up to be an overwhelmingly masterful tree. If it is cut down, there is hope that it will sprout again. But if we bury man in the earth, it's not like a stump. There is no life that comes forth. And that its tender shoots will not cease, though its root may grow old in the earth, and its stump may die in the ground. Yet at the scent of water, just a little water, it will bud and bring forth branches like a plant. But man dies and is laid away. Indeed, he breathes his last, and then where is he? As water disappears from the sea, and a river becomes parched and dries up, so man lies down and does not rise, till the heavens are no more. They will not awake, nor be roused from their sleep. That is, until there is a new creation and a new cosmos. Man will remain in the earth and will not rise. I think there's an indication of the hope that is there, though. We who have more revelation than perhaps Job did, certainly knowing Christ. There are two emblems of Christ's authority in the Old Testament that I think speak to this particular kind of horticultural metaphor, that is, of the sprouts coming up after a stump and something coming forth out of something that is dead. And the emblem of the priest is the rod of Aaron, and the emblem of the king is the stump of Jesse, the tree of Jesse, the root of Jesse. And I think that the power of the priest king is he has power over life and death. And we remember the story of Aaron's rod and how there was jealousy over his unique possession of the priesthood. And the 12 tribes donated their staffs, the tribe of Levi, the staff of Aaron. And they were left by Moses in the camp in front of the ark overnight as God's answer to that rivalry against his ordained priesthood. And when Moses went in to retrieve the staff of Aaron, which was just a stick cut off of a tree, probably we wouldn't even recognize the kind of tree. It's just a dead stick. But on the morning, after God had spoken to it, this dry stick with no water brought forth buds and blossoms in the whole cycle, and ripe almonds. The DNA of the staff was revealed that way. It gave every stage of life, came forth from a dead stick. So it became an emblem of resurrection, and for that reason it was placed in the Holy Ark. The priesthood spoke of the priest who had power to bring life forth from death. And the same with the royal house. The emblem of the house of David is the root of Jesse that becomes the imperial tree of David, which is a continuation of the olive tree of Abraham, the tree of David that becomes magnificent and mighty. And Ezekiel, all the birds of the fowl of all the earth come to find rest there, anticipating the ecumenical aspect of its reign over all the earth. The scepter of David was given, and he should ask the nations, and they should all be given for his inheritance. But the house of David, because of the sin of David, was cut off. It was felled like a mighty tree, and all that was left was a stump in the ground, which is dead, an emblem of death. But coming up out of that was the shoot, coming up out of the shorish, The root of Jesse was the shoot that became Christ. He had the power, even out of a dead dynastic tree, to bring forth the power of life. So that becomes an emblem. So who is able to bring forth? And then the one who came forth, the priest king, was able to touch the leper and bring forth healing and cleanliness. And he's able even to touch the dead. Remember the daughter of Jairus. Or to touch the woman in her state of perpetual uncleanness with her bleeding uterus, and bring them healing and cleanliness, and even out of death itself, he was able to raise them up. So all of these rich metaphors speak beautifully in the context of the scripture. There is hope for a tree. If it is cut down, that it will sprout again, and that its tender shoots will not cease. Though its root may grow old in the earth, and its stump may die in the ground, yet at the scent of water, just a little hint of water. I've seen the Jordanian desert, the Judean desert, and Jordanian too, but I've seen the Judean desert many, many times, and in all the seasons. And in the summer, it's just burnt over. It's brown and nondescript and dead. But what you don't understand when you're looking at it, you think you're looking at just a sea of sand, but it's not. Because on the surface of what looks to be sand are many, many seeds, and just a little moisture coming when the wind shifts in the spring, in March and April, and the wind comes off of the Mediterranean that's laden with moisture. The desert blossoms, and it's green and filled with purple flowers. It's just gorgeous. Just a scent of water, and those seeds will begin to germinate and bring forth branches like a plant. But man dies and is laid away. Indeed, he breathes his last. And where is he? So he's contrasting, we're worse off than a desert. No life can come. As water disappears from the sea, a river becomes parched and dries up. So man lies down and does not rise till the heavens are no more. That is the cosmic turn, when the resurrection of the sons of God comes, like Paul says in Romans 8. The earth itself will be delivered. The earth is groaning, and those are birth pangs. It's groaning to be delivered from the curse that was put upon it after Adam's sin. And that curse will be released when the sons of God are born of the earth, and they come up in that great eschatological resurrection, and then they will no longer be subject to death and perishing. And there will no longer be any need for resurrection, and there will be no uncleanliness to contaminate life. Oh, that you would hide me in the grave, that you would conceal me until your wrath is past. And he will, and he has. He will conceal us and clothe us in the womb of the earth, which is the womb of man. The only mother Adam had was Mother Earth. So when we are committed to the grave and interred in the earth, that is a conception. The seed of new life is being placed in the earth, and when God calls it forth, it will be a glorious resurrection. Oh, that you would conceal me until your wrath is past, that you would appoint me a set time and remember me. If a man die, shall he live again? That's the perennial question, isn't it? That's the question of life. Is there resurrection? If a man dies, shall he live again? All the days of my hard service, I will wait. He looks at life as a service. We are serving God. We're serving God not only in the day of prosperity, but in the day of adversity, as Solomon says. All the days of our hard service, we will wait. You've heard of the patience of Job. Till my change comes. That change is his being translated into the new heavens and the new earth. You shall call, and I will answer you. It's not the moisture, the scent of water that will bring us forth, but it's God's call. He will call to us and resurrect us from the earth, from the mother of man. You shall call, and I will answer you. You shall desire the work of your hands, for now you number my steps, but do not watch over my sin. He cares for the least littlest thing. the slightest step of his beloved, of Job. But he does not watch, he will not protect, he will not preserve his sin. He must lay in the bosom of the earth in order for that sin to be taken away. My transgression is sealed up in a bag, and you cover my iniquity. But as a mountain falls and crumbles away, and as a rock is moved from its place, as water wears away stones, and as torrents wash away the soil of the earth, so you destroy the hope of man. My goodness. You destroy the hope of man if man's hope is in this world. That's true. There is no hope if it's only found in this world. But not if it's grounded in the new world to come. If that's the case, and we're convinced of it, we can prevail and live life with hope. You prevail forever against him, and he passes on. You change his countenance and send him away. Speaking of man. His sons come to honor, and he does not know it. His sons come to honor, and he does not know it. That's the nature of man, too. After we leave this earth, we don't know what will become of our children. Some may arise and become very notable for the benefit that they bring to humanity and the gospel. Others may become notorious for their wickedness. Who knows? We don't know after we perish in death. His sons come to honor, and he does not know it. They are brought low, and he does not perceive it. But his flesh will be in pain over it, and his soul will mourn over it. And thus ends Job's reply to Zophar.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Warren Gage podcast. If you enjoyed this message, please be sure to like and subscribe to one of our channels so that you never miss an episode. We'd appreciate it if you could also leave us a review. You can find us on drwarrengage.com, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. To support the podcast and gain access to exclusive offers and content from Dr. Warren Gage, please visit our Patreon account at patreon.com/Dr. Warren Gage. We hope you join us next time on the Dr. Warren Gage podcast.